good morning to everyone. My name is Teresa Myrthil. I'm the Vice President of Programs at AFCEA DC. On behalf of Anthony Robbins, President of AFCEA DC, thank you for joining us today for a virtual 5G luncheon. So a few housekeeping items before we get started. To ask our speakers a question, there's a Q&A button that will be to the right of the screen. So if you'd like to ask a question, please enter it there. If you would like to change the view of your screen, click the Change View button at the top right. If you have a connectivity issue during the webinar, please send a chat to the WebEx producer. So we have an excellent speaker lineup for you this afternoon with Dr. Joseph Evans, who is the Technical Director for 5G at the Department of Defense, and Mr. Frederick Moorefield, Deputy Chief Information Officer for Command and Control and Communications at the Department of Defense. Today's panel will be moderated by Chris from Durabex Insider. So I'd like to thank our sponsors for their support of AFCEA Washington, DC. And without our sponsors, we could not produce year-long programs that cover key issues within our industry. Their contributions support AFCEA DC scholarship program, which enables local students to attend college to pursue a career in STEM. A special thank you to Cisco for sponsoring today's digital event. Their gracious support of our chapter is how we are able to hold virtual events to stay connected with our community. So before we begin our panel, I'd like to invite Mr. Anthony Robbins to come share some more information on the AFCEA DC Scholarship Program.
Okay, and here we go. Thank you, everybody, for joining our call today. And as Teresa mentioned, thank you so much to our community who have supported our chapter, the AFCEA DC chapter, as a part of AFCEA International for so long. I think everybody knows the AFCEA story really well, so I won't go into all that, except what I will say is we have tremendous pride in our ability to contribute to community. And in fact, as a nonprofit, what we try to do every year is give generously to our community in the way of STEM scholarships. And so today is my absolute honor to present 20 high school seniors with scholarships to colleges, of course, of their choice. And these scholarships come from AFCEA DC. And since 1989, our chapter, with the support of all of you in the community and, of course, our sponsors, since 1989, we've awarded more than 400 scholarships, totaling more than $2.5 million. And I just have to say that again, if you'll allow me. Since 1989, we've awarded 400 high school seniors scholarships to colleges of their choosing. And the total of those scholarships have been for more than $2.5 million. And in fact, in the last 4 or 5 years alone, we've given almost $500,000. So it's just with tremendous pride as I represent the AFCEA Board of Directors that we actually do these scholarships. And it's one of the reasons why AFCEA DC was ranked as the #1 Washington, D.C.-based education scholarship by College Consensus. I'm so proud to be associated with AFCEA DC, and I'm so proud that we're able to do these scholarships as we do every year. Okay, so today we'd like to present this year's AFCEA Washington, D.C. STEM Scholarship Award winners. We received a record 160 applications for this year's scholarship from a wide selection of high school students. The 20 students selected for this award are scholars, leaders in their schools, and key contributors to their communities. They represent the best and brightest of Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, and we're honored to have them represent AFCEA DC as they continue into college next year. And what we wanted to do at this point is recognize them in alphabetical order, okay? Each of these winners is going to receive a $5,000 scholarship award, and AFCEA DC today is giving $100,000 to the local community for these STEM scholarships. So if you all are ready and with excitement, I'd like to recognize 20 outstanding young people. Hadir Awan, high school, Forest Park High School, going to George Mason University, intends to focus in electrical engineering, and he chose he submitted his STEM application, noting that real-world application of STEM makes the world a better place. So congratulations, Hadir. Michelle Basoah, Mount Vernon High School, going to the University of Virginia. Major is intended to be chemistry with pre-med track. Why chose STEM? To make advances in medicine and become an OB-GYN. I just, I got to tell you, these are great young people. These are great universities that they're going to, and great perspective of just kind of where they are at such a young age. We're so proud to be associated with this group. Kevin Carlson, Loudoun County High School, going to the University of Virginia, intended major computer science. Why STEM? To contribute to cutting-edge technologies. Congratulations, Kevin. Ruby Carter-Ogden, Chantilly High School, going to North Carolina State University. Major is microbiology. Ruby wants to raise awareness towards racial health disparities in America. Ruby, we wish you tremendous success in your chosen field. Nadia Chichester, Benjamin Baker High School, going to Temple University, intended major environmental science. The reason she chose STEM is to embody Black excellence, as less than 5% of STEM workforce is made up of Black women. Nadia, we wish you tremendous success at Temple, and we're proud to recognize you with this scholarship. Our best wishes to you. Jessica Cohen, James Robinson Secondary School, going to the University of Delaware, mechanical engineering. Why STEM? To design products that make a difference in people's lives. As I read these things and appreciate the chosen majors and the universities that they would like to go to, I reflect back on myself as an 18-year-old, and I just can't imagine the poise and maturity that exist in these high school seniors that are going on to college. I'm just so proud to award these folks scholarships, and it's actually a great day to be working and associated with AFCEA. Marco Staggett, Washington Liberty High School, going to Virginia Tech, intended major computer science. Why STEM? To pursue a passion for gaming and coding and to set an example for his sister. It's just beautiful. Marcos, good luck to you. Nicole Kalok, Woodgrove High School, Georgia Institute of Technology, intended major, material science and engineering. For why STEM? Love of math and science. It's beautiful. It's perfect. Nicole, good luck to you and congratulations. Fionnuala Mahoney, Walt Whitman High School, going to Cornell University, nutrition and food sciences, intended major, minor infectious disease. Why STEM? Because she's inspired by scientists at the NIH where she was an intern. Beautiful association with our community at such a young age. Good luck to you. Teresa Myrthil, James Robinson Secondary School, going to Carnegie Mellon, intended major, chemical engineering. Why Teresa chose STEM? The variety of availability to choose her path. Katherine Newton, the Potomac School, going to the University of Virginia, intended majors chemistry and intended minors computer science. Why STEM? She was inspired by her amazing high school teachers. So while we're at it, Katherine, you reminded me and us, so many of our special students and so important to the field of STEM are these high school teachers who are, so many of them are so amazing in their own right, and as a community dealing with the challenges of online and distance learning in this virtual environment. So we thank all the high school teachers. Thanks for bringing that to our attention, Katherine. Callaway Pate, Benjamin Banneker Academic High School. College is Penn State University. Callaway, you're going to have to go to one of the best creameries on any major university campus I've ever been to. The ice cream is out of this world. Intended major, Environmental Systems Engineering. Why STEM? To catalyze societal advancements in sustainability. Just amazing, the maturity of these young people. Good luck, Callaway. Eliska Peacock, High School. Without Walls High School. School Without Walls High School. College, you might have heard of it. Stanford University. Major, Computer Science. Why STEM? Because a teacher encouraged and supported her ability. Beautifully said, and thank you again to the teachers. Hannah Selken, Lee High School. Going a long way to an amazing university, to the University of Southern California. Attended major, Chemistry and Public Policy. Why STEM? To become a champion of STEM opportunities in schools. Hannah, we wish you safe travels and good luck. Now, I'd like to just take a moment and let you know that the next 6 scholarships that we intend to award are presented by me on behalf of Worldwide Technologies. WWT is an amazing IT company, and they've been a key contributor to the AFCEA Washington, DC Scholarship Fund. With their generous support, we're able to give even more scholarships this year. So I'd like to thank their Senior Vice President of Public Sector, Brian Thomas. So let's continue. Hopefully there's smiles on everybody's faces, and hopefully you're enjoying getting to know a little bit more about these 20 award winners, and you're taking some pride in the AFCEA DC chapter itself. Isabel Sowers, Patriot High School, going to the University of Virginia, intended major, chemical engineering. Why Isabel chose STEM? To challenge the notion that women cannot be successful in STEM fields. That's beautiful, and it's an important topic, and we wish you success as you explore that and make a difference, Isabel. Ronnie Stefan, Walt Whitman High School, Georgia Institute of Technology, intended major, computer engineering. Why STEM? An interest in autonomous vehicle technology. Ronnie, I can tell you that's a terrific field to get involved in. Many of the people on this call will have children of the ages that perhaps may never have a driver's license. We wish you tremendous success and enjoy as you pursue that. Nikolas Struntz, Frederick High School. Again, going a long way from home to UCLA, intended major, aerospace engineering and physics. Why STEM? To make a significant contribution to fields of space exploration and theoretical physics. It's just amazing. Nicholas, we wish you tremendous success at UCLA, and congratulations. Rediet Tadasi, Cardoza Education Campus, going to George Mason University, intended major, computer science. Why STEM? To create software and hardware projects to help his community. Well, in that case, we wish you tremendous success and enjoy your journey, another important topic. Bear with me as I got a little bit of a technical glitch. Lucy Waite, high school, Herndon High School, going to Virginia Tech. Intended major, aerospace engineering. Why Lucy chose STEM? To contribute to NASA missions. I mean, I just got to say that out loud, to contribute to NASA missions. These are young people. These are graduated high school seniors on their way to college with such big, bold ambitions and such poise and maturity. I'm just so impressed. I'm so thankful that AFCEA DC gets to connect with these people and perhaps help them in some small way in their journey. Lucy, congratulations and good luck. Jimin Yoon, James Herbert Blake High School, University of Maryland, College Park, computer engineering. Why STEM? A passion for virtual reality. Well, Jimin, you're going to enjoy today's program as we talk more about 5G, because 5G is going to be important to the future of virtual reality. I think you've chosen an exciting field, and good luck to you at the University of Maryland, College Park. Okay, so with that, I've concluded the recognition of our 20, and sorry, I'm just a little bit of technical difficulties. There we go, I've corrected that. I've concluded the recognition of the 20 seniors who have most recently graduated from local high school communities, to whom we're given $5,000 apiece to help them on their journeys to the colleges of their choice, as we have shared with you today. This is all part of our program as a not-for-profit, where we try to give annually and generously to the local community to support the STEM fields. I hope you were as impressed as I was with this community of people. So with that, congratulations to the award winners, many of whom are on today's call. Best of luck to your journey, and we look forward to following your progress. And at this point, I'd like to continue with our program. It is my honor to introduce our moderator for today's panel, Chris Dorbeck. Many of you know Chris, some of you don't. He's the founder, editor, and publisher of GovLoop's Dorbeck Insider. He cares a lot about the work that he does to help make the government better and more effective. So at this point, Chris, I'm going to turn the program over to you, and thank you for your time, everybody.
Thank you, Anthony, and thank you, Teresa, and congratulations to all you scholarship winners. I know how tough school was this year. I have a 9-year-old son, and it's been a surreal experience. So really impressed with the work that you're doing. And even somebody going to Hannah going to USC, send me a note if you want little tips. It was probably, when I was there were dinosaurs roaming around. So I think that's not true anymore, but still congratulations. Congratulations to all of you. Very impressive. And I'm just going to ask the team, just let me know, we're waiting for Joe. He had a call with the Hill that he was taking care of. So they're going to let me know as soon as he pops on. But Fred is here with us. So let me get to all that stuff. We have an awesome discussion. In fact, students, if you want to hang on, we're going to have these guys talk a little bit about how they got to the jobs they're in. You know, they have big corner offices, so we're going to have them do that in just a second. But let me quickly, we have a great discussion coming ahead. We're going to spend some time talking about why we all need more Gs, right? We have two great guests to explain this. Dr. Joseph Evans, he is the Defense Department Technical Director for 5G, and Frederick Moorefield Jr., to his friends. He is the Defense Department's Deputy Chief Information Officer for Command, Control, and Communications. And you got an introduction of me. I'll quickly introduce myself. As I mentioned, my name is Chris Dorbeck. I was the editor of Federal Computer Week way back in the day when there were these things for the kids. They used to publish these things called magazines, and you used to get them, and they came in paper, and it was an amazing feat. Now it's all online. I was then the afternoon guy here in Washington, D.C. on a radio station called Federal News Radio. I now do a blog and podcast for an organization called GovLoop's Dorbeck Insider, where we focus on 6 words: help government do its job better. I'm also writing a book on how to do this, frankly. We've all sat through those sessions where it feels like Harry Potter's Dementors are sucking all joy out of the room. My working title, the working title of my book is that Moderators Matter, because I believe moderators actually make a difference. And you can let me know how I do. Links to the Dorobeck Insider and my social media posts can be found at cdorobeck.com, CDOROBEK.com. And we get to chat with all of them in a moment. A few business items. They mentioned questions, and I know we're all getting used to this virtual format. So you're all smart people. I've moderated with you guys before. You're very intelligent. You know what's going on. So as much as you participate in when we're all together, I want you to do the same here. We'd love to hear from you. It really helps us make sure we're addressing the topics that matter to you and helping you do your job better. The question is right there on the side. And in fact, I'll answer one of the questions right away. We've already received one question, so I'll answer it for everybody. This session is being recorded, as you may have heard at the beginning, and there will be an on-demand version. It will be posted on the AFCEA DC YouTube page, and I actually scheduled a link to the YouTube page on my Twitter feed, C. Dorobeck on Twitter, so you can find it nice and easy, and it's really easy to get to. And with that, let's get into this. Team, I don't see, oh, he's in, great. We got both of you. Hi, Joe. Hi, Fred. Let me reintroduce them. Joe Evans is the Defense Department's Technical Director for 5G, and Fred Moorefield, he is the Defense Department's Deputy Chief Information Officer for Command, Control, and Communications. Before we get into the 5G stuff, we have all these students who are all really smart. I'm going to ask both of you guys how you got to these esteemed positions. And Fred, I'm going to have you start. How did you get here? How did you get to this place? I'm sure when you were just graduating high school, you didn't say, hey, I'm going to be the Deputy CIO of Command, Control, and Communications. That wasn't your dream. But how did you end up in this place?
I appreciate having the opportunity to speak about that. I had kind of a dubious journey. I'm a Pittsburgh inner city public school product. When I graduated from high school, which, by the way, I had great teachers and mentors in high school, I made my way to a place called Wilberforce University, which is in Ohio in the cornfields, historically black college. I went there because it was a dual degree engineering opportunity, a partnership between Wilberforce University and the University of Dayton in Dayton, Ohio. When I graduated from high school, I knew I wanted to do something in the math, science area. Wasn't sure what that was. So I started on to be a scientist, and I had no idea what a scientist was. It just sounded good. I ended up in school at Wilberforce, and I had great mentors and teachers there. I started out as a mechanical engineering. I look at this thing as kind of like a marriage. I went into mechanical. That didn't work out. I didn't like that. Jumped next to civil engineering. Didn't like that. And then ultimately landed in electrical engineering, and it was like a marriage made in heaven. When I started doing circuits and designing circuits and doing all of the things surrounding the EE, it just made natural sense to me, and I embraced it. And ultimately graduated from both Wilberforce University and University of Dayton with a degree, a bachelor's in mathematics and a bachelor's in EE. And ultimately went back and got a master's in EE. I liked it so much at the University of Dayton.
And the amazing thing about that is sometimes you think you have your career all plotted out and it goes in twists and turns that you can never expect. Let me bring Joe in and have him, Joe, answer the same question. How did you, there weren't even any G's when you started doing this. How did you get to now you're overseeing 5G, for goodness sakes?
Well, I was always kind of a network geek before there was such a thing back in the 1980s, date myself. But and then as wireless technology started showing up in the 90s, where you could,
we'll see if he pops back. As you mentioned, we're going to talk a little bit about 5G, and I'm watching. As soon as he pops back in, we'll get him to catch up, and hopefully that won't be a problem through the whole discussion. Fred, start off a little bit about, because I think everyone. Probably many of the people have heard about 5G and what it is, but particularly, oh, there you are, you're back. Let me go back to Joe, and then we'll come back to the broader question. Joe, finish up how you got to where you are, and then we'll get into the 5G discussion.
Sure. Hopefully the network won't drop out and look fine here. So I was hearing you through that entire thing.
Okay.
So so basically, I ended up in academics through the '90s and did some startups along the way. Worked at DARPA for a while, and it was just kind of a natural progression. The 5G world was ramping up, and the folks at Secretary of Defense reached out, and there we go. I ended up as the 5G czar for DoD. So
the guru.
Yeah.
So that makes for a good transition into our general topic about 5Gs. And people, I think sometimes, and I was saying while you were gone, but a lot of people hear about this, and particularly for the younger folks who may like, okay, why does this matter? This is more than just, I see 5G on my phone all the time. This is more than just getting another G, right? Explain to us why this matters. Why are we talking about this today?
Right. Yeah. So I think that's an important point. It's just not, faster cell phones. It's all the other things that enable. So really people think of 5G as having kind of like a three-legged stool of, higher speeds, lower latencies, and massive scale. And all of those combined really help for particular types of applications we've never been able to do before. So things like all the IoT types of Internet of Things types of applications. Now we would have a ubiquitous network, so you're not, needing to mess around with your Wi-Fi network at home or things like that. It just integrates easily into the communications fabric. There's other things like, the low latency part helps with, autonomous vehicles, gaming types of applications. All these types of new applications are really what make 5G exciting. It's an underlying foundation for all of those, but it's really the applications that make 5G.
And specifically for DoD, why is this important to DoD? I mean, so often you guys are really at the front ends, and I was listening to the students and saying, Kevin was talking about Kieran, I'm sorry, I'm messing up your name, but was talking about wanting to work on cutting edge. This really is cutting edge stuff. Why is it important to DoD?
Right. It's important to DoD because it provides a way to interconnect all of those types of systems that we want to be able to use. So autonomous vehicles and even logistics. So a couple of our experiments are involving logistics. Well, being able to tag every vehicle that's stored at a vehicle depot, track it around the depot, monitor its health, is it leaking oil? All those sorts of things are enabled by having communications fabric that interconnects all those types of devices. There's also the issues of obviously protecting the network as well, and so it would be obviously we're very interested that adversaries aren't using 5G technology against us essentially. So we think it's important from both aspects, the capabilities it adds, as well as making sure that we're okay with our communication security.
We can't go without mentioning, because it was just a couple weeks ago that DoD just put out its 5G strategy. And in fact, if anyone doesn't see that, I posted a link to it on my Twitter feed. So see Dorovac, and you can find it right there if people want to read along. Well, don't read it for us. I read it last night, and please don't read it for us. But give us a little I'm sure I can tell there's a lot of work in there, but let's give us a bit of overview as to what this is, why it matters, and what you're hoping to accomplish with this.
Right. So really what we want to do is, make sure DoD can use and use securely 5G technologies and work with our partners and allies and so forth. So really there's multiple lines of effort that are part of this, but one of them is, promoting technology development in 5G. So some of the things I mentioned, we had some experiments, some projects that are just starting up. With logistics, that's an example of one of those types of technology development efforts. Another part is securing 5G. So it's making sure that we understand, what's in the systems, what the provenance of the hardware and the software is. It's making sure that the protocols are defined in such a way to make sure that we have secure environments. That's part of it. Another line of effort is standards development. So we think that some of our potential adversaries have been, pretty, forward-leaning in the standards bodies. We're trying to basically make sure that U.S. interests, both DoDs in particular, obviously for us, but make sure that your U.S. companies are getting a fair shake as well. And then finally, the other line of effort is working with our partners and allies, engaging with them, because they obviously have economic interests as well, but we do, as DoD, plan to be able to fight together if we need to, and so we need to make sure our systems are interoperable and secure, with our systems and the allied systems.
We're already getting, and I'm thrilled that people are actually asking questions. William has already asked a question about security, and I'm going to pin that over here for 1 second, if that's okay, William. But I want to bring Fred in because I know one of the things you're really focused on are the standards aspect. Talk a little bit about why standards matter, and from a CIO position, why this is important.
Yeah, so let me expand on that a little bit. So in my DoD CIO C3 hat, there's 3 areas that are important to us as part of the bigger DoD 5G team, which, by the way, I want to thank Dr. Griffin, Dr. Porter, Dr. Evans for their leadership in that, and more importantly, the entire department, because we have embraced this 5G thing, and I've never seen an organization working together and so synchronized in this space. Just kudos to them. And another shout out to the National Spectrum Consortium, which is our engagement with industry and academia and small business, big business, really pushing this 5G thing. So kudos to all of that work. Within the C3 portfolio, there's 3 areas that is of interest to me and that I bring to the team, to Joe's bigger team. Spectrum is the one, and under Spectrum, I'll call it as making Spectrum available for 5G, working in partnership with FCC and NTIA, so that we can continue to be the global leader in 5G rollout. Spectrum is a key aspect of that. The second part of that is we ensure that when we make that Spectrum available for 5G, that we protect national security, and we balance both that national security aspect as well as that economic aspect. And the third piece is, as the Spectrum airwaves get more and more congested and crowded, we got to figure out how we do it better. And one of the things that Joe's going to be looking at under his pilot projects is dynamic spectrum sharing. And within the C3, we're trying to lead that for the department. How do we pivot from the way that we do Spectrum today to, no kidding, dynamic spectrum sharing? We really believe that those who figure out how to do spectrum sharing and master spectrum sharing will dominate the spectrum airwaves in the future from a global perspective. So there's a lot of opportunity in that. The second area is standards. Standards is important to us. We don't typically get engaged in standards, but because of this 5G being so important to the department, we felt it necessary to engage the standards bodies, the 3GPP, the ATIS, and no kidding, we just stood up a DoD Tiger team to do that. We're in partnership with the industry, the federal government, and others, not just from a U.S. perspective, but from a global perspective. How do we engage those 5G bodies, make contributions to start affecting what those standards are, not just an option, but things that need to be baked into the 5G capability so that DoD can consume those 5G capabilities that are safe and, and protected. And the last piece is in my portfolio is communications. And we have the overarching portfolio for communications for the department. That's everything comms, including 5G. And as we modernize our force, 5G will be one of those things that we consume as part of the department, to be one of those things as part of our comm infrastructure and one of our comm capabilities.
Joe mentioned the strategy and why it's important, and you even mentioned that this is so important to the department. He talked a little bit about why it's important, but I also want to hear from the CIO side. Why does 5G matter?
So 5G matters. So let me back up a little bit. So within the department, we have something called the National Defense Strategy that lays out where the department is going from a national defense perspective. Underneath that, we have something called the department's Digital Modernization Strategy, which encompasses how we modernize our capabilities, our comm capabilities, including IT, cloud, cyber, and all of those different aspects. Underneath that is something that will be coming out later on this year called the C3 Strategy. And then ultimately under that is electromagnetic spectrum strategy. 5G is a part of all of those strategies. The importance of those strategies is for the department to lay out where we are going in these different areas. It's kind of like the North Star, big picture, kind of nuggets. What are the things in there that we need to work to get us moving in the direction to make this 5G consumable for the department? And Joe already talked about some of the nuggets that are in that 5G strategy, but you have to lay the groundwork from a bigger picture perspective so that everybody knows where we're going with all of this.
I'm going to ask both of you. William asked the question, can you speak about required policy reform that's needed in advance of the DoD 5G strategy? Joe, do you, and he'll text in and if he wants to, if you need more to that question, but do we need to do are there other policy reforms that need to happen to make this all come together, to make this work?
I think it would certainly help. Let's just say so, and I think certainly, I'll let Trey talk more about spectrum types of issues in terms of policy. But I think there are issues across the board. Again, some of these are really more in Fred's lane, but for example, one of some of the cybersecurity standards, I think, and how we approach them need to change. We have had the ideas of moving towards a more risk management approach, and a lot of that's moving along. I think turning that into action is an important aspect of being able to move forward with 5G, because as we roll out these applications, whether it's logistics or AR, VR for training, or whatever those applications are, we really want those to be able to connect to DoD networks. And so working those policy issues of how you make that happen, is an important aspect.
Fred, did you want to chime in on that question? Is there about whether there's any required policy reform that's needed?
Yeah, I think 5G is going to be a game changer, even though I think it's the next generation of 4G. Joe kind of already mentioned the ubiquitous connectivity of all of that stuff. Not just being your cell phone, but everything being connected. One underpinning aspect of that is spectrum, and how do we share the airwaves with 5G and 6G and 7G and what's coming? Within the department, we're wanting more and more access to wireless stuff. So our increasing requirements are going on as well. So I think that 5G and the next G after that is going to require an overarching overhaul of how we do business. I mean, to talk about dynamic spectrum sharing, that's not how we do business today. We're in a static kind of environment. So I think it's going to require some overarching policy changes, regulatory changes to accommodate the future, and we're going to autonomous kind of capabilities, meaning minimal people in the loop, minimal people operating, wireless everything, no person driving a car. It'll be a driverless car. How do you make all of that happen? It will require regulatory policy changes to enable that kind of stuff.
I have a 9-year-old, and if we could get driverless cars before he turns 16, that would be a great help to a father. So I can tell you. Joe, let me ask you, because somebody, and I'm sorry I don't have your name, I think it was Sam, but asked about pilots, and we saw, I actually saw when I was preparing for this that you guys are doing a kind of pilot prototype out at Nellis. Can you talk a little bit about what you're doing, what you hope to learn, where you are on that?
Yeah, so we really have 5 pilots going right now, and more to come. I'll mention that in a second. But the 5 pilots we have going so far, well, what we call Tranche 1 was Marine Corps Logistics Base, Albany, Georgia, doing basically smart warehouse for vehicles, think large vehicles, Humvees and things like that. We had Naval Base San Diego also doing smart warehouse, but more like retail warehouse types of things, where you're think of like pallets going to ships, things like that. At Joint Base Lewis McChord in Washington State near Seattle, doing AR VR for training, and also associated with that is the Optima Training Center, which is out in the center of Washington State, and so they can maneuver at large scale out there. So that's one of the pilots there. And then Hill Air Force Base is one that's very near and dear to our heart, because we're doing dynamic spectrum access experiments there. What we're calling Tranche 1.5 is kind of a joke maybe, but is Nellis Air Force Base. That was a site that was actually mandated by the NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act. and for 2020. And so we've added that as a site. And it's a great site. I'm actually very excited about this one, where we're looking at basically disaggregating command and control. So take an air operations center, think of a command center, and break it into its constituent pieces connected by 5G technology. Start by just breaking it apart. Secondly, make it transportable so you can move it around easily. Third part, make it mobile. So we're really excited about that one, and think it will really have a big impact on operations. So that's the Nellis experiment. So those are the first 5, and then this afternoon there will be a press briefing at 3:45 this afternoon. It'll be live streamed on defense.gov, where we will discuss the next tranche of bases that we'll be deploying to. So there you go.
I know there are a couple of procurements that are out there that are currently in assess. Talk a little bit. I know there's stuff you can't talk about because it's actually in the process, but
right.
Tell us what you can talk about.
Yeah, so certainly, that first tranche of bases, as well as the it has been out there, and that's actually the solicitations have closed on those as of last Friday. It's the last one of those, I can't say much about it, but I can say the response has been enthusiastic.
There you go.
So that's been very good. On the Nellis deployment, we are just about within days of releasing first RFP for the test bed itself, and probably a couple weeks away from, or maybe sooner, away from releasing the RFPs for the disaggregating the command and control capabilities, and doing network experiments, beyond the basic test bed, doing network experiments on that test bed. So those pieces are probably in the next couple of weeks. I think we have an industry day with the Information Warfare Research Program, which is the consortium we're using for that particular deployment. We have an industry day, I think it's Monday.
Awesome. And where can they find it? People who may want information about that, do they just?
Sure. So probably the easiest thing to do, we do have a website associated with the effort. It is 5G dash 2TO dash XG.org.
Easy as pie, simple as pie. We got a couple questions. Teresa and Andy also asked, and you guys have been great with questions here. I hardly have to work. Thank you for that. But we made it this far through this discussion without discussing China. Talk a little bit about how this connects with, is it Huawei? I always mess up the company's name. Their 5G technology and the Chinese expansion, because you can't read a story about this without China somewhere coming up within the first 5 words.
So I'll start by fielding that one. Basically our view is that we need to succeed no matter what Huawei and ZTE and so forth are doing, and so it's important for us to be able to push U.S. 5G technologies forward, or help U.S. 5G technologies move forward, as well as support the the overall industry in the U.S. as well as like-minded nations. And so, there are certainly telecom providers from our allies and partner nations that we, also, want to succeed, and we want to be able to use those technologies. The other piece of it, of course, is being able to secure our networks. If we deploy to somewhere where there is a Huawei switch or Huawei, cellular network, and we want to use that indigenous network, we might under some circumstances want to use that indigenous network. We want to be able to work over those networks safely. So I think you've seen some of the things that we've written about the zero trust philosophy, basically not assuming that the network that you're running over is perfectly secure. Layer security at all levels, so that you don't put all of your trust in one type of defense. And so we're really focused on making sure that we use that zero trust philosophy moving forward with our 5G experiments, so that we can prototype, how to work in environments where some of those, Chinese companies may have a presence. And
and you have to really think about the whole supply chain, don't you? And there's no one piece. It's complex.
Exactly.
Fred, I should mention that that question came from Teresa, who's one of our scholarship winners. So thank you, Teresa. Very. We need to get her, sign her up already. She's smart. She's thinking about this stuff. Fred, do you want to talk about this China aspect at all? And the broader security questions, I think, is what it raises, right?
Yeah, I think Joe covered the majority of it. But again, I'll go back to, our engagements in the standards arena. That's where we begin to really start shaping what the standards looks like in that regard. Security is going to be one aspect of that. Supply chain, how do you, bake in standards that address the needs of the department? And I think even bigger than that, the United States at large. So that's the way that we're going to, affect that change there.
While we're sticking on security, William had asked the question: what aspects of the 5G network are most in need of better security? So that's part of the question. But just, Joe, I'm going to have you start and talk about security overall, because China's a slice of this. There are a bunch of slices. How are you addressing the security aspects of this?
Right. So I think, from to kind of take the first part of that question, what parts of the network need most attention? I think it's arguable that back to the maybe my zero trust philosophy argument. All parts of the network should be viewed with a suspicion.
Right. Easy for me to say.
I think it's important that we look at all parts. There was some discussion at one point, you may have seen in the press, of whether, if you had an unsecure edge network, would a secure core network be good enough? Some of our allies and partners were looking at that type of trade-off. And frankly, we don't think that's a good way to think about it. We think that there's risks associated with threats throughout the network. Some places it's worse than others. Certainly a lot of the network control functions and so forth, there's a greater threat there, just because it's a nexus of things like authentication and authorization processes. But really, the entire network needs to be viewed with suspicion and with emphasize zero trust.
Yeah, it's security, big question. Fred, I'm sure you have something to say on this too.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add is, I don't want people to get lost in the sauce here. The reason I said that is because even today we operate across unsecured networks. So we're doing it today. So this isn't new. This is just building up on the next generation of G that's coming out, and we need to do a better job there. But I don't want people to lose the fact that we're already operating, especially when we deploy overseas. We're operating in an unsecure network already today, so this isn't new.
I see a question from, Reddit? Read it, I'm messing it up, but the website, some people didn't get it, so they heard 20 rather than, it's 5G-TO-XG.org. And I also tweeted it out, see Dorabek if you want to find it easily. So it's out there for everyone to go to, and so you can get the information. I know there were a bunch of questions on, I've lost my place on questions, but there's so many coming in. 5G, Joe, you mentioned marketplace and applications, and somebody asked, Kathleen asked, do you foresee DoD having a marketplace for 5G approved applications? Is that how you see this working? And connect the 5G to applications. There's a bunch of questions around there.
Sure. That's an interesting idea. And so I guess the way I would view it as that when I say applications or apps, I'm really not just meaning what you might find on your cell phone in terms of a iPhone app or an Android app or something like that. I'm really talking about the entire application in terms of the back end and sensors or tags or other IoT things that connect into that overall application. So when we talk about applications in, say, smart warehouse, we're really talking about all of that, integrating the tags that have 5G capabilities that allow you to identify a particular pallet of freight or a particular vehicle. That's part of the application. The back-end software that's managing the logistics system. So it's taking data from those tags and making some sort of information out of that can then drive decisions. All of those bits and pieces are part of the overall application. And so that's really what we mean by application. Another example would be the AR/VR for training. Well, that includes not just the particular software that a user might see, or the goggles that VR goggles that a soldier might use, but also all the other pieces of the system, how you would control the weapons that are integrated into that emulation environment. All those pieces are part of the overall application. So that's really what I mean. What we do hope is that when we are doing these different tranches of deployments, that the applications that we're coming up with are basically dual use and they look alike what you'd see in the commercial world. So really what it would be us buying, essentially acquiring things that are very close to what the commercial world is using. So if you think smart warehouse for the Navy or the Marine Corps, a lot of that looks like what you'd expect from UPS or FedEx, or maybe International Harvester keeping track of their tractor inventory, or all these sorts of things, or AR/VR as an analog in gaming, computer gaming. And so in some ways, we're really hoping the marketplace for commercial solutions, we can define how those commercial solutions can then be directly integrated into DoD systems. Very much the way today, DoD doesn't build many custom computers anymore. We buy Dell laptops or something.
Right. And we got it often was a situation like it was the chicken and the egg. If people don't build the applications until the network's there, and you can't build the network until there's some reason that it feels like we've gotten better at that kind of process.
I think that's right, because I think enough of the legwork for that was done in the early days of the internet, and once the web took off, people understand what you're getting with an improved network. It's a little easier to argue that okay, we need to invest here, and people can see the return on investment essentially.
Yeah. Your discussion about the briefing this afternoon got a lot of people going, by the way. A lot of people very eager about that. We have like 4 or 5 messages. I think if you think people found it, it's all on that website, which is 5G-TO-XG.org. And as I say, I posted it on my Twitter feed, cdorbeck.com, so you can find it nice and easy. I want to jump back to security, because a couple of people have mentioned the cybersecurity maturity model certification. Can you give us perspective on that and supply chain and how that all connects and relates together?
Fred, do you want to take a crack at that one?
No, I think I'm going to defer that one to you.
Either way.
Not touching it.
I just don't want to get hog all the airtime. We think those models are actually a pretty good way of thinking about moving forward. And so really we like to look at the trade space basically between the maturity or the quality of what's going into the cyber solutions, versus the risk that you're incurring.
Yeah.
And so part of what we're trying to do as we move forward with some of our experiments is understand that trade space a little better. I think, my boss, Dr. Porter, always makes the point that there's no such thing as a perfectly secure system. And so you're always trading off risk versus for benefit for those systems. And historically, DoD maybe didn't have the most nuanced view of that, but in recent years, maybe recent decades, but recent years at least, I think there's a much more nuanced view of that there needs to be a trade-off there, and that's reflected in some of these modeling aspects and risk management framework concepts. And so we really want to be using those ideas. What we can do with our experiments is put real data behind this. And so, it's just not an abstract thing, but we can start looking at specific systems and specific types of potential vulnerabilities, and start to work that into our decision-making process about whether it's really worth, deploying this technology or not. So I think getting that real, granular data is really, really important, and why it's important to do experiments.
Yeah, awesome.
Let me go for that one too. And I think the importance of that, the data coming out of those experiments can also feed into the standards part of it. So it's one thing to propose some kind of proposal to go into the standards bodies, but to have data to support those proposals will go a long way. So, some of the stuff that Joe's doing in the experimentation pilot aspect, we're hoping to use some of that data to feed into those standards bodies. So that's going to be very important.
Fred, I'm going to stay with you because Sean asked the question, and I think it's a good one. The opportunities 5G presents will quickly outpace resources and funding. How are capabilities and investments being prioritized and managed? How do you put this into, you have a lot of things that you have to spend, and the pie is only so big. How does this fit in?
Well, I think from the CIO perspective, again, 5G is part of our modernization plan. And one of the top priorities in that plan, and and it'll do just like everything else within that portfolio. It'll compete with priorities within the department. But again, it's one of our top priorities within the CIO, and one of those things that that we'll be pushing forward when we're comfortable that it's available to be able to be consumed. Joe and crew have the portfolio for the R&D aspect of that and doing all of the pilots. We're kind of following their lead, and when they give us the thumbs up and the services gives us the thumbs up that this stuff is ready to go and ready to be consumed and become one of the things that we use as part of our portfolio, because this won't be the end-all be-all, and this is the only thing we're going to use. Just like we use commercial SATCOM and purpose-based mil SATCOM, 5G will be just one of those things within our comm portfolio. So,
and Joe, when are you comfortable handing off, saying, "Hey, we're good to go"? What has to happen for that, for you guys to at least hand it over to Fred and team and the services and say, "This is a thumbs up"?
Right. So I think it all depends. Everybody hates that answer, but it really does, and it depends on which applications we're talking about and very specific types of things. So I think there are certain technologies that could transition pretty quickly because they are very similar to commercial, and really the big hurdles on a lot of those things, think back to like Smart Warehouse and ARPR, a lot of the concerns are really around securing those systems, getting an authorization to operate on DoD networks,
right.
may change with both learning and policy. And so some of those things you might consider transitioning pretty quickly. There are lots of other things that are maybe significantly longer. So the way I view kind of insertion of 5G technology into DoD is really kind of at least three levels. I mean, one is simply replacing wires and that sort of thing. So direct use of 5G technology just as a network. And that's relatively straightforward if you can get past things like what equipment to buy that is improved, has been vetted, what your policies are in terms of authorization to operate, things like that. So that's one part of it. Another part is the applications. So things like the smart warehouse or AirVR or things like that are kind of direct use of a commercial type of technology, and those improve efficiency for DoD, things like that. So there's kind of a direct return on investment type of thing. And that probably will take maybe a little bit longer because there's some, custom software development there, because DoD systems are always just a little bit different. There's those types of things. Then the third part is use of constituent parts of 5G, which is, okay, suppose I want to use the beamforming antenna that's being used by Sprint for their 2.5 gigahertz cell sites, but use it for DoD applications, maybe in a nearby band or something like that. Those types of things where I want to use these particular chips that a certain U.S. Manufacturer is creating in a DoD system, just repurpose it for DoDs. Those things take time, and that's the type of thing that the real handoff has to be to a program of record in a service that then needs to run through its processes and so forth. So like I say, it all kind of depends. All of our experiments are kind of on a 3 to 4 year timeline. The initial set of tranche 1 experiments, and you'd guess that the other ones are going to look similar. And so hopefully within about a 2-year time frame, we'll start having some capabilities pop up where we can say, here's some fruit we can pick and use those technologies.
Yeah, let me add that too. Yeah. I think one of the little nuances that is not being highlighted here is the team that Joe and Dr. Porter and Griffin have assembled encompasses the entirety of the department who have equity in this 5G space. So the conversations around everything from prototyping to when we think the stuff is ready to be consumed by the services and across the department, the cyber aspects of it, standards, all of that stuff is being discussed around the table, with representatives at the leadership level within that body. So just the construct of that body is going to allow us to, I would go out on the line and say, speed up the implementation and the consumption of these capabilities. I would even argue that this group is a little different than many that I've seen in the department, where you have that kind of representation around the table from across the department, where it'll help accelerate the implementation of this thing going forward, even from a budgetary perspective. Aligning budgets and priorities across the department. Capes around the table, all of the money people, the security people, the spectrum people, everybody's there. So I think that'll help a lot.
Again, one of our scholarship winners, and I'm read it to tell me, send a pronouncer in there so I can get your name right. So I'm sorry for messing it up. But he asked, and I know, Joe, we had talked about a little bit of myth busting. We want to do a little bit of myth busting, but he says, I've heard 5G creates radio frequency radiation. Considering how close the towers need to be in order to obtain the intended bandwidth, what's being done on issues that comes to that kind of radio frequency radiation? There's those questions that I hear a lot. I saw in England, people thought they were spreading coronavirus. Do some myth busting for us. Separate out truth and not truth.
Yeah, there's basically almost no truth in any of those concerns. I mean, it's I think in many ways it's analogous to a lot of the power line types of health issues that were, a decade or a decade and a half ago were surfacing, and in the end, enough studies were done to show that there were no impacts. RF radiation levels, so the health safety of RF radiation levels have been studied for many decades, and are pretty well understood. And so the power limitations on the cell sites and the handsets are controlled, limited in order to avoid any health effects. And I don't think there's, at least I have not seen any documentation of any health effects whatsoever studies that have been done. Most of those concerns show up in the higher frequency. The people focus on that because it's new. It's the part of 5G, and DoD has operated systems up there forever, and so we think it's pretty well understood and a non-issue, frankly.
Deanne asks, what are the top technical challenges with integrating 5G across DoD assets and infrastructures? That's a great question. How do you pull all these people together, pull all these pieces together, and people together, for goodness sakes? But
with great difficulty and long
herding cats, right?
Exactly. That's exactly right. Exactly right. But I think the first step has been this wonderful working environment that initially Dr. Porter set up back early 2019 maybe, and that working group has really just really harmonized and really has been effective in moving things forward. So, for example, just as an example of that, so in selecting our experiments and the bases at which those experiments will be run, what we did was reach out to the services. We came up with some, our own set of harebrained ideas for what the applications and so forth would look like, the experiments would look like. Handed those over to the services. They came up with some additional experiments, and we got together, settled on here's some experiments we could do, and then we handed that back to the services and said, okay, well, where should we do those experiments? Which bases should we use? And so the Navy came back with Naval Base San Diego for Smart Warehouse, and the Air Force came back with Hill Air Force Base for spectrum sharing and things like. So it was very collaborative type of back and forth, where we're making sure that the military services are not just represented, but are really have a key leadership role and key stake in all this.
Fred, talk a little bit, because you mentioned your three areas: spectrum, standards, and communications modernization. Talk a little bit about what are the biggest challenges with those three areas as you guys try and integrate 5G in?
I think the first one is making sure that it's a safe and protected 5G, and it's that we really can consume that capability, because once it's integrated into our DoD systems and infrastructure, it's there. So you got to ensure the cybersecurity and hygiene is all in place to ensure that we have a reliable and trusted 5G network that we're connected to, number one. Number two, today we do spectrum sharing basically by protecting military operations by drawing big circles around our bases and say, 5G or 4G or 6G or whatever can't operate around that installation because it's going to cause interference to whatever the operations are happening on that base. We have now entered into an arena where those same capabilities that we used to protect ourselves from are now being integrated onto the base. So now we have to figure out, from a technology perspective, how do we enable that spectrum sharing to happen in real time? No kidding, because we no longer can have the luxury of just drawing circles around our bases and saying 5G can't come on the base anymore. So that's a new opportunity and technology challenge that we have to embrace and get ahead of. I would argue with you today that there are no other countries around the world really looking at how you really do real spectrum sharing, dynamic spectrum sharing. So this is a real opportunity for U.S. leadership in this area. Whoever figures that out will dominate the spectrum, because whether you're operating in a congested, contested, or constrained environment, it's all about spectrum sharing. One is being done permissively, and the other one is being done intentionally. So it's all the same. It's all solving for the same engineering equation.
I'm going to stay with you, Russell, and ask, stay with you, Fred, and ask a question from Russell. And he was causing me to look up, do you see CBRS and 5G as competing technologies or used together?
No, I see those as being compatible with each other. We see those as kind of like 3G, 4G, 5G. We see all of those as being, being compatible together, and things that the department would look at utilizing. So we don't see those as competing.
Joe, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, just completely agree. And so, for example, at the Hill Air Force Base experiment site, we're looking at the coexistence or how 5G and high-powered radars and airborne radars are going to interact. And we've used CBRS as kind of the entry into that. It is something that's been tested, deployed. So can we start with that as the first model with the Hill Air Force Base experiments, and then moving forward, refine that, improve it, to move beyond. So I don't see them as competing in any way. In fact, it's a nice foundation.
And Al asked the question, how do you see 5G experimentation dovetailing with the joint all-dominant C2 initiatives, love DOD, like advanced battle management systems, on-ramp demonstrations? My goodness. And how is that not an acronym? But you got the gist of the question. Al, you're testing me today, aren't you? Thank you.
That's funny. So we definitely see them working together. So Fred and I work very, very closely with some of the same folks that are working those programs. So for the JADC2 types of efforts, we think some of the concepts coming out of 5G will be very useful. Certainly, the proliferation of beamforming capabilities will be one piece of that at the physical layer. More at the network layer, some of the ideas in slicing, doing different private networks or different security levels, using those capabilities is another type of technology that we think will be useful in that environment. So we think that there are parts of 5G that not only we can use in things like JADC2, but also in maybe see how they interwork, I guess might be the right way to put it.
I got to say, I love the AFCEANs. They are not shy about asking questions. It's awesome, and I think they're great questions too. So with that, let me ask Bill's question. As part of the digital modernization and using 5G, are there plans to update DISA rules for network connectivity for 5G aspects, i.e. reinventing or requiring out-of-band circuits or rules on using network slicing /MEC? I didn't have time to look up what MEC is, but I'm sure you know what it is. Fred, do you want to take that?
Yeah, I think it's still TBD. I think we're still in the early stages of determining how we're going to consume this 5G capability. And as I mentioned earlier, I think there's going to be a lot of overhauling of DoD policies and regulations and doctrine as we look at how we consume this thing, kind of going back to JADC2, Joint All-Domain Command and Control. It's about how we connect and integrate all of our capabilities, across the DoD enterprise, when you go to battle, and 5G is just one piece of that. How do you integrate a 5G into that kind of construct? I think that's TBD. I mean, I know it's on the list of one of those capabilities that's being considered in that effort, but I think there's still a lot TBD right now. And a lot of that's going to come out of Joe's pilot programs, and some of it will come out of other stuff. But I think Joe and crew are kind of the frontiersmen knocking down the trees, as we go into the wild, wild west, as the House DoD is going to really, really consume some of these capabilities for a variety of different use cases. It's not just
get Joe to say yeehaw, and he goes off and does his thing.
Not just warfighter stuff. I mean, we're talking about everything from warfighter in the battlefield all the way down to the base and having smart bases. So it's everything. How do you consume that capability, and what are the policies and things that need to be changed that would enable that to happen?
Joe, did you want to amplify anything he said?
I think that's a great answer. I do think that things like MEC, mobile edge compute, things like that do bring new challenges to how we do networks. I mean, it's different having your data center in a big secure location with cages and guards, as opposed to having your data center out at the edge of the network, at a less secure site at a base or even off a base. And so I think there are some, real challenges there with how we do security of these systems, but I mean, that's why we're doing prototyping, experimentation, and trying things.
Lots to learn, lots of still to learn. One of you mentioned the Tiger teams, and I think it was you, Joe, but Justin asked, can you elaborate on DoD's new Tiger teams getting involved in the 5G standards bodies, and how are they advocating for DoD's viewpoints within those bodies? And I don't know whether that may be more Fred.
That was Fred that made it.
Yeah, that was me. So we established this new DoD's 5G standards Tiger team, which is composed of, my team's going to kick me for saying this, geeky engineers.
I think nowadays we wear that. People wear that with pride. There's no one's embarrassed by it anymore.
I really do. And again, this is a new area for DoD. We don't typically engage in these kind of forums, so this is new for us. We reached out across the department looking for experts, with specific, just call it pedigrees, to be able to participate in these in this forum. And I'm going to be honest with the AFCEA folks here. We need help. That's one of those areas where a specific niche technical somebody that knows how to, has the right DNA to be able to work in these kind of forums. And it's not just being technically sharp and understanding what kind of proposals you're submitting in the way of supply chain and cybersecurity, spectrum sharing, or whatever it is, but has the diplomatic skills and the social skills necessary to be able to, get a comprehensive, not just U.S. initiative moving forward, but a global perspective, and getting global and international partners on board with that proposal. So it's going to take a lot of work here. We're just starting this thing. We're going on, I guess this is getting recorded so we can go back in history and record it. I said it. This is going to be a big initiative for the U.S. and it's only going to get bigger. So any help AFCEA can do to help identify some POCs that we can talk to who's interested in getting engaged in this, send them my way.
Well, and I think it's as we talk to those young people growing up, all your skills you pull in, like it's not just being a nerd. You also have to have those diplomatic and be able to speak and be able to communicate and be able to write, and all those things come into play. We're not just one layer anymore. Absolutely. So it's so important. That kind of I'm going to continue with you, Fred, because Randolph asked the question: what can AFCEA do to help this effort? You mentioned one way. Are there other ways that AFCEA can help you as you do this? And I'll open it up to both of you, but I'll start with you, Fred.
Yeah, and I think from a broader perspective, AFCEA can help in one regard because the department is kind of, even when Joe's effort there with the National Spectrum Consortium, us within the C3 and the CIO, we really have to look at this entire 5G thrust from a whole of nation perspective. So when you talk about 5G, you can go down to a lot of different conversations, everything from supply chain to standards and spectrum. But having a whole of nation approach to pushing this thing forward is the only way we're going to win. So any way that AFCEA can help with that, galvanizing the country around, I think Joe and the crew and our team within the department has done a good job with the department, with the secretary's leadership of embracing a whole of DoD approach to 5G. But we really need that whole of nation approach pushing in that same direction so that we can enter the international stage and have that U.S. front pushing in the international forum, gathering our allies and partners in NATO and Five Eyes to help us in this regard. But having that whole of nation approach as a start would be a good help there. So AFCEA can help in that regard.
Joe, how can AFCEA help you do your job better?
Yeah, I actually very much agree with what Fred said, and we do think that this is a whole of nation type of problem. One of the things that we were doing, so fixed standards, since we're just talking standards, we work closely with other agencies across the government on 5G standards with our friends, NTIA, Department of Commerce, on issues like that. There's even a standards coordination activity run out of the White House. So there's a lot going on in that space. So that's one example. I think helping to promote in general, the idea of 5G technologies and applications, I think would be helpful. So a specific example. For example, we wonder to have a workshop or conference, looking at military applications of 5G technologies, new ideas type of discussions. Some organizations run some of those. CCC calls it something. Anyhow, basically new
Right.
types of.
We have some fancy word for it, but
Yeah, exactly.
or an acronym, one of the two. Probably put an acronym around it.
Probably, but those sorts of things would be very helpful to us to kind of see, where we should be going, because obviously not all good ideas, but maybe that's an understatement, come out of DoD, and really what we're counting on is industry, academia to provide, the ideas that will drive all of this forward, and so. We would just be, let me back up a little. We had did a sort of request for information, RFIs, in the middle of 2019 on military use of 5G through the National Spectrum Consortium. Got lots of great ideas back that has now driven our ideas of what we should be doing experiments on, and which then led to where we're doing experiments. What we would like to see is more of those ideas in the broader forum, and AFCEA, I think, is well placed for that. One of the parts of the program that I didn't mention before is what we call the next G part, and that is, what we'll be doing beyond 5G, and what will you do for 6G and 7G, so forth. And so,
oh my God, my head's exploding. I've barely got my arms wrapped around 5, and you're going on to 7. And so, kind of what is the underlying technology base that we need to make sure that the U.S. is leading in 6G and 7G, yeah,
and so forth. And so that is a part of the program that we're really just starting to ramp up now. But I think organizations like AFCEA can be really helpful in making sure we're seeding that with the right ideas.
I got to be cognizant of time because we have to be very conscious of the clock. So I'm going to squeeze in one more question. I just wanted to hold on 1 second. Let me just get this out. Michael, if you the site for the thing this afternoon is both in the stream. If you look in the stream, it's also on my Twitter feed, cdorbeck.com. You can find it both places. It's 3:00, so you can find it there. I wanted to get Jerry's question in, and then I'm going to close out with asking both of you guys to leave people with something they should think about. But what's the strategy for monitoring the health, performance, and cybersecurity status of DoD data, services, and applications that will ride the 5G network? And you have like a minute and a half, maybe 45 to a minute and a half to answer, both of you. Joe, go first.
Okay, me first. Okay. So that is, frankly, one of the areas in which we're going to be focusing both some of our experiments on tranches 1 and 2, but also we do plan some solicitations in the future, specifically looking at security-related aspects. And so that type of idea of monitoring is just one piece of that puzzle and helps address and mitigate some of the risks.
Fred, do you want to add anything to that?
No, he said it answered there, and I would just add that our cyber folks within the CIO is part of that work there. So all of that stuff was being headed by Jack Wilmer's team within our CIO.
So you each have 90 seconds. Fred, I'll start with you. Give folks, we've talked about a lot in more than an hour. Give folks one thing you hope they take away. If you could plant one thing in their brains, go ahead, plant away.
Yeah, so I think, so I was thinking about this, and there's actually 4 areas, but I only give you one. And I think one area that's not getting enough attention and needs a lot more focus, and Joe talked about the next G and the 6G and the 7G and whatever. So he's kind of hinting at something called millimeter wave, which is the high band spectrum above 24 gigahertz. And I know there's a lot of debate out there about, millimeter wave and the use of that, and then really the value of that and the technology capability that exists in that spectrum range. And I think a better understanding of what is really out there in that spectrum space would help us with the even in 5G today, but I think in the next G and the next Gs after that, because Millimeter wave brings a lot of bandwidth, so a lot of throughput, so a lot of high data rates can go through millimeter wave because there's a lot of spectrum up there and wide pipes. But a better understanding of what's really out there in millimeter wave and where we need to go from a technology and component perspective in that space. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there. You'll hear a lot of debate, whether it's in the Defense Industry Board, Defense Science Board reports. There's some kind of, I'll say, disagreements in that regard. But on our side, at least, within the CIO, we believe that there's a lot of opportunity in millimeter wave and having a better understanding of that space going forward and how that integrates in the next G and the next G after that will help a lot. Thank you.
Dr. Evans, wrap all this up in a big bow that people can take away with them.
I would just say that, I think, our view is that 5G is the first really comprehensive attempt to have a ubiquitous communications, wireless communications technology that will link people to people, people to machines, and machines to machines. And it's important that DoD be in the forefront of that technology because it will provide military advantages in the future, whether it's for 5G or 6G.
Dr. Joe Evans, he is Technical Director for 5G at the Department of Defense, and Fred Moorefield Jr., Frederick to his friends. He is the Deputy Chief Information Officer for Command, Control, and Communications at DoD. Thank you guys both for doing this. Really awesome job. Thanks for all the great questions. I love AFCEA. You guys made my life much easier, and they were awesome questions. So thank you for all doing this. Really appreciate it. And thanks to the students, and congratulations on your scholarships. Go show us how to make the world a better place, please. I think you have plenty of opportunity. It's like a low bar to crawl over at this point. So go make the world a better place. And with that, I think I hand it back to Teresa. Are you taking this? Closing this out? There you are.
I am. Well,
thank you, Teresa.
Hey, thank you. I just wanted to say thank you to everyone for joining. This is obviously a very interesting topic. It sounds like there's a lot more out there that we could learn about and explore, and something that our members are very interested in. So thank you. Chris, thank you for hosting today, moderating the panel. Great job. Thank you, Dr. Evans and Mr. Moorefield. Appreciate you accommodating your schedules for this. And I know we had some back and forth and some challenges with, everything going virtual, but thank you, and thank your staff as well. And just want to say congratulations again to all the scholarship winners. Very, very proud of all of you. It makes all of us very hopeful for the future. And please consider joining AFCEA. Come back to us and tell us how you're doing. We really would love to hear from you. And so with that, just thank you again to everyone. Please be safe, and we will see you at an event soon. Thanks, and you may disconnect now.